Hello, I'm constitutional attorney Catherine Henry. Welcome to the Constitution segment recap for Season 2, Episode 25 of Restore Freedom Weekly. This week we talked about avoiding burnout while defending your rights. Now, most of you know that our conversations in these episodes are typically heavily legally based, right? I'm talking about tons of quoting parts of the Constitution, the state constitutions, the U.S. Constitution. I'm quoting from court rules and state laws and federal statutes, perhaps, giving you guys some snippets of what's coming out of different cases and case precedent. But this week was quite a bit different because that burnout in the freedom fight is real, and it can happen quickly. So I want to be able to keep you going in the freedom fight, whether you're fighting for the freedom of just yourself or for many of those around you. It's important that we each do our part in that fight for freedom. Keep in mind, this is just a simple recap. So to hear that full discussion from Tuesday, go ahead and click the link that's on the second page of the slideshow. So, avoiding burnout while defending your rights. Are you getting overwhelmed with having to defend your freedom? What about financially overwhelmed in defending your rights? Are you confused with all the terminology? Not sure how to find cases or statutes? Perhaps you're unsure about which software is required. Defending your freedom can be an exhausting task, especially if you're having to do so in court. So like I said, this week we focused on bringing it back to the basics so you can keep going even when it all seems daunting. Just a reminder, check out our true or false question of the week. It's posted on our YouTube channel on the community page. So go to youtube.com/restorefreedom and check out that true or false question of the week between 10 a.m. on Tuesday and 10 p.m. on Tuesday when the answer is posted. Now, this week, even though it's not a typical episode where we're heavily into the exact language of the U.S. or state constitutions, I did want to start with this little snippet from the Florida State Constitution. And your state constitution likewise has a similar provision. It might be in the portion on the judicial powers. Otherwise, it might be right in the Declaration of Rights. Various sections of your own state constitution to check out to find a similar provision. But Florida State Constitution, Article 1, Section 21 is entitled Access to Courts. The courts shall be open to every person for redress of any injury, and justice shall be administered without sale, denial, or delay. Very important there. Well, now, we're not just talking about being in court when it comes to the fight for freedom. No, the fight for freedom is best won outside of court, far before a case ever has to go to court. But when all else fails, then we end up in court. So we are talking about that, but just wanted to give you that reminder that even if you're not an attorney, this is stuff you need to know. You need to know how to represent yourself because you can't always rely on an attorney. You might end up with an inexperienced attorney or a shady attorney or someone who's, just flat out corrupt and bought off or whatever the case may be. Perhaps there's just not an attorney out there willing or able to take your case and you are forced to go it alone. Everyone should know the basics so that when you find yourself in a situation, even if you don't want to be the one starting a lawsuit, you could still end up in court, and you need to know those basics. Even if you're not in court, though, like I mentioned, you're in the fight for freedom just speaking at your local city council meetings or school board meetings. It's still something that you need to know where you can get sources and references. We had a great comment from Melanie on YouTube this week during our live stream when she was mentioning that the most effective freedom fighting work that people could do is when they're confident in the facts. And in order to be confident, you really have to study and know what all the facts are that are relevant in your situation. So knowing the relevant definitions of law or knowing what the particular rules that are relevant would be, things like that. So also two important things that are relevant to this week as far as U.S. constitutional provisions. Keep in mind, we are a government of we the people. And I want you to look at Article 4, Section 4, where that guarantees us that Republican form of government where we the people retain ultimate control and authority, but simply elect representatives to do the day-to-day functions of government for us. And we have, of course, the Supremacy Clause of the Constitution guaranteeing that the U.S. Constitution is the supreme law of the land and that all people in government have to follow it. So those would, of course, be relevant in any discussion, but certainly in today's discussion. So if you are financially overwhelmed in defending your rights, the three sources I wanted you to remember to be able to reach out and ask for help would be, first of all, you need to use social media. If you don't use social media, it's going to be a little bit harder because it's a free way to access millions of people, But if you're truly against social media, print this up on business cards with a QR code that takes people to one of these sites for you. But pass them out to your congregation, to your coworkers, your neighbors, your family members. Go to local events and just meet strangers who might be like-minded and want to support your cause. There's ways that you can do it, but of course, using social media is the easiest and cheapest to get the word out. And be careful about which organizations, if you're financially strapped by the freedom fight, maybe you weren't before, but you are now, or maybe you just live on a limited or fixed income and fighting for freedom just doesn't seem practical on your own, financially speaking, just because there's maybe court costs or filing fees or transcript fees or whatever, FOIA, Freedom of Information request fees that you have to pay to get the results of those requests. Don't be afraid to create one of these crowdfunding types of scenarios where people can join in and help you, support you by sending you $5 or $50 or $500 and get your freedom fight moving in the right direction. But be careful about which financial organizations that you use. I wouldn't heavily rely on PayPal or Stripe or the credit card processing places, big banks. But Give, Send, Go, Cash App, and Square have stayed politically neutral and support and allow you to spread your message, and they support the freedom of speech and without being discriminatory in their political views. What if you're overwhelmed with all the terminology that's out there? Well, Black's Law Dictionary is the #1 resource I'm going to direct you to. Buy whatever version you can afford, but if you're starting somewhere and they're all roughly the same price, then I would suggest go ahead with the most current version of Black's Law Dictionary and don't get an abridged version. Go ahead and get the deluxe version so it has anything and everything in there that you might need, because those deluxe versions will be very good at giving you a lot of different examples and different ways to explain the various terms. Next, I want to point you to 2 free resources that are available online as well as in print, but Webster's Collegiate Dictionary and Webster's 1828 Dictionary. I talked about why each of those is important and how cases cite to both Black's Law and Webster's Collegiate Dictionaries on a regular basis. But make sure you use those even if you're not in a court case, but just fighting for freedom at a local level with government meetings, etc. If you're not sure how to find cases or even just statutes that might be on point, I want you to make sure to tap into your state legislature's own website. That's going to be your best primary source for finding your state's laws that are on the books. If you're looking for federal laws, the Cornell Legal Information Institute, we talked about why, the whole big situation, but keep the Cornell Legal Information Institute in your repertoire of tools to use. And if you're looking for cases and need a free, quick way to search, Google Scholar is actually a good source to use. If you're unsure about which software is required, there's actually no software required for the freedom fight at all, even if you're in court a lot. I use Google Docs as a free program to draft briefs and other legal pleadings. Google Sheets is what I use to compile the table of authorities or table of citations and then plug that in with my full brief. Google Slides is actually a good way to create quick and easy charts and graphs that you could even just screenshot and plug into a brief to use. And I personally use PDF Exchange Editor as a PDF editor. You can use a variety of PDF editors. That's just one that I would recommend. And I use that to put all of those things together and add consecutive page numbers and make it as easy as it can be on me. But that's all information that you don't have to use any of those particular pieces of software. Those are just the ones that I use. And of course, the first 3 are free. And the last one I mentioned has a free version. I just don't use that. And I don't remember exactly what the differences are. But again, this is just meant to remind you that you're not in it alone. And there are some basic tools out there, many of which are free for you to tap into and be able to fight for your own freedom without expensive software or inside connections, without having all the legal definitions off the top of your head. So make sure to check out these resources and check out, of course, our Way to Get Involved challenge we shared yesterday. Our freedom fighting tools we'll share tomorrow. And of course, watch that full episode from Tuesday if you haven't already. But it's been a pleasure to be with you today. Again, I'm constitutional attorney Catherine Henry. And thank you for joining us on our Constitution segment recap. Hello, I'm